Well, now.
Okay, now
Now
we're on.
we are on.
I thought we were going live in the middle of our conversation that was not actually the topic of the show, but was still quite interesting.
I mean, it was kind of the topic of the show because I came back from holidays and I was saying that in a small engineering team, a lot of things happened if you are back, like if you are out for a week. I think that's how we started the whole thing, right?
Yeah,
So to talk about like you are gone for a week, what has been shipped?
yeah. I wish I could tell you. I was here.
You were there, yeah, but then also I guess you also lost track. Was it last week? Was it the week before? Like it's also then well, but I think I missed also a few things, not only inside the company, but probably also outside the AI world because I did digital detox for sure. I had a week without my phone, without my
Must be
computer.
nice. Must be quite nice. Wait,
Yeah.
without your phone even? Where'd you go?
Yes.
I haven't even asked
I
you.
it was not somewhere well, it was somewhere in Germany, but I took a seminar on
Ah,
like
cool.
personal development stuff and things. So,
Oh, nice.
and it was intense. It was an intense journey, and most of the time we didn't need our phone, so I kept it in the room and just used the alarm clock of the phone, and
Yeah.
that was a really digital detox week.
I think they say that's good for you, and I think I would agree. Um, okay, so what have you gathered that happened during your week away, your healthy week away?
My healthy week away. I saw that there has been some stuff happening in Claude for sure. I think 4.7 was released.
Mhm.
Um, I saw that there is a review tool, Ultra Review,
Yep.
or something like that, but I haven't tried any of those out. I think you shared something around design and other features, but maybe you can bring some light into this stuff.
Yeah, I think I mean, so there's a lot of stuff I haven't looked into. I think OpenAI is releasing, has released like an agents thing in ChatGPT. I think they released it today, yesterday. I haven't checked that out yet. That's supposed to be pretty cool. Um, all the other stuff on my list was more Claude related. And indeed, it was 4.7, which I've had kind of not a super good experience with so far,
I was
personally.
already not happy with 4.6 when I left. I felt 4.6 was sometimes dumber than 4.5 for certain scenarios. I don't know if that's also your.
Yeah, it's not, and it's not a matter of like it's done very good work, and it's hard to rip out what's just been me. Like I've been like yeah, I don't know, just I had a week, and so um, part of it may have been like the way that I interacted with the model, but at the same time, so last week, Mies and I did like a dry run with the model, and there's nothing to report really, because it came out while we were streaming. And this time, like I, I try not to be too influenced by the like Twitterverse saying the model is acting this way, but I already had that impression, and then I read some of the like vibe takes online, and I was like, that is what I'm experiencing. And what I was experiencing is like a bit more hesitation. It's strange because you know, everyone loves to complain on one spectrum or not. Like people have always said that a lot of anthropic models were too eager. But I relied on, and now they're basically the thing that I related to was that the model felt almost um, unassured or uh, like anxious about taking initiative. And in a way, like not wholeheartedly, but in a way that was very distinct from 4.6 for me. And the way that cropped up, I kept a list. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah.
I kept a list called the Claude Anxiety Log. I just like the way that sounded. And so in one area, it just this relates to the show today. I rely heavily on like setting up QA scenarios for it to run, kind of against the feature that it's working on. And there was one feature I worked on where it just didn't write the scenarios and it didn't execute them. It just skipped it entirely. And I tried analyzing the session, and its own, like in a separate session, its own interpretation of what went wrong was more like, oh, I just thought that type checking was my verification. And it was just so strange to me because I'd not seen that before. On other areas, like I have a skill for it to provision a new preview environment of our app, so it can deploy everything, has a database branch and everything. And in that case, like it just kind of froze. And like asked, even though like I did heavy prompting of like work autonomously, I'm going away for several hours and I want you to like set up this thing and test it against a preview environment. And it just kind of like tripped up, and within like 5 minutes, apparently, it was like, hey, I need your help on this thing. And it did not, and it has not before. So it was just like I've had a bunch of experiences like that, and I don't know why.
The thing that I remember, and I want to know if you experienced that, is that must have been the 4.6 then, is then when I was working in a repo and I told it, can you please like go ahead and fix something or look into this? It was complaining it could not like find those information, but it was in the repo, so I really had to tell it where to look for it. And I felt that was already interesting because normally I never needed to, so I could only say, I don't know, fix. I even don't know what the fix was, but it was feeling like I really had to point toward those things. And then in a research-based task, I had a typo in a name, and it was not able to make the clue who I wanted to research. So it was, I don't know, it felt really weird.
Yeah, so I think like if it was a git ignored file, I think they may have changed something in the harness
It was
recently.
not a git ignore file.
Okay,
It was just
and that's,
normally in my repo.
I don't know what to say. Yeah,
It's
I
just,
think there have been some changes in the harness that make it a bit more hesitant to do things that I relied on, which were semi-dangerous things because I like to live on the edge, and I might be feeling that. But okay, so 4.7 released, still a fantastic model. I need to adjust the way that I work with it, is how I've felt, and I'm still doing that. Ultra Review, which you mentioned, is a research preview, and I thought it was going to be included with Claude Code subscriptions. It kind of is. You get 3 runs of it, but otherwise it's billed as extra usage, and Claude Code is already getting expensive, gotta say. So
I mean, honestly, I need to make money as well. So
they do. And I ran it last night on something, didn't look super hard at the result. I mean, like I looked at the thing, I read what it spat back, and it basically just does a combo of remote and local, like a swarm, a team, and then aggregates, or that does reviews on your code and then aggregates all of that. Estimated cost between $5 and $10 per run, but again, you get 3 free ones if you're on I think like a pro or maybe just a max plan. And it came back with good stuff on the feature I was working on. But yeah,
so
that was Ultra Review.
Is it a review for backend code or for front-end code, or it doesn't matter?
Everything.
Can it do everything? Okay.
Yeah. It just takes whatever you're working on and then goes wild.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is a natural segue into, I mean, there was a bunch of other stuff, but maybe we skip that in favor of segueing into what we wanted to talk about.
Yes.
Which is, Nella?
The feedback loops, right? For agents.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of review, right? We've talked we already had an episode on review, I remember, where we looked into how I could review things a little bit better with my agents.
Yeah.
But I think today we talk more about, and correct me if I'm wrong, how we do it in an autonomous way.
Yes. And I think a thing to call out, I'm going to share my screen, which I know is a little sloppy usually because, well, actually, let me pull up the thing I want to show first. Okay, so we have a tweet from Boris Cherny, the creator of Cloud Code, which was announcing Opus 4.7. Share entire screen. Notifications disabled. Great. And it was 6 tips on getting the most out of Opus 4.7. The last one was make sure Claude has a way to verify its work. And correctly, he says it's been a way to get more out of Claude, but it's more important than ever with 4.7. And so verifying its work can take a lot of different forms, but basically the spirit of what he's saying here is if you have a web app, give Claude access to the running web app to look at it and make sure that it works okay. If you have a desktop app, use computer use, so something that can control your computer. And I think unwritten here is just, that make sure that Claude knows how to start up your server to test it end to end. And I think today, okay, so I can talk about a little bit of what we do regarding, hey, look, it's our stream right here. Oh, that's funny. Should I visit it? No. I can talk a little bit about what we do, but we can also talk a little bit. So I don't have anything to show really with Agent Browser, which is kind of the tool that we use for inspecting our desktop app, which might sound funny, but we use Electron in our desktop app, which you can speak to over the Chrome debugging protocol, CDP, and basically treat it like a web app. And so Claude can use Agent Browser, treat our app kind of like a browser, and test it as it would like a web app, which is kind of helpful. So we don't have to go for computer use. And there was like, maybe it'd be worth showing this. Something I would note here is like it is helpful the first couple of times that you use a tool like that to verify your app, that you're babysitting Claude through it, and that you ask Claude to reflect on its process of testing the app. And the reason that's important is because Claude typically stumbles and has to get a little bit familiar with what it means to test your app. And that process can be wrapped up into clearer instructions in the future for how Claude should launch Agent Browser, in our case, how it should wait. Claude continuously stumbled in the first couple of attempts to test our app because it needed to wait for things to load. And it was rediscovering that every single time we were going through that verification loop. And at a certain point, I wrote a document called CDP Pitfalls, and that's referenced in any of our kind of like markdown files that describe how to test the application in certain ways.
Quick question, Brett. You mentioned
yes.
Agent Browser. Is that something is that something that comes with Claude, or is that okay?
So yeah, I guess this is a good. Do they have a landing? I thought they had a landing page for this. So Agent Browser, I think we've talked about before. It's a CLI and a Cloud Code plugin /skill. It is very similar to Playwright insofar as it's a way to launch a Chromium browser and then have Claude control it. Mm-hmm. It's very token efficient, and it represents the DOM in special ways to just make testing go faster. It can also screenshot what's going on in the DOM, and then it has a special skill for working with Electron apps as well, which is what we tend to use.
So that's why we use the Agent Browser and not Playwright, because we need the extension and the plugin for Electron.
Okay. No, not necessarily. I think we use it because it was just a little faster and more accurate in our. It was a little bit vibes. I
Okay.
think it uses fewer tokens. It worked quite well, and so we swapped out Playwright for Agent Browser. And what else is there to say? Yeah. Okay. So like, I'm going to be bad at explaining this, but like, one thing they do is they have these like refs from snapshots, which you'll see as this like at E2 at E3. And that is kind of the way that the agent navigates the representation of what's on the page. And I really should have prepped. I didn't prep a demo for this, so I don't want to like stumble through it. But yeah, this is kind of our preferred tool. Now, the interesting thing to note here, if I go to, how do I go to my bookmarks? To browser. So you can kind of see I bookmarked this tweet by Simon Willison in basically last November. And so at the time we were using MCP with Playwright, like the Playwright MCP. That was probably my favorite MCP, aside from, what was it, Docs? What's the Docs one? Forgot it already. Do you remember the Docs one?
No.
Okay. Context 7. Wow.
Oh yeah, Context 7. Yeah, but it also, oh my God, it feels like this is ages ago. This is the other thing with AI. It feels like we are talking like 2 years back in time, but no.
So what was interesting is I saw this tweet, I tried it out, which is like, oh, you can just have, actually, I think Lau, our colleague Lau, switched to this and verified that like, oh, this works faster and usually better, which is you just have, you have Claude Code write scripts that invoke Playwright instead of invoking the Playwright MCP. And the whole idea of like, it tends to figure everything out, was correct. So yeah, that's kind of, we already had some like MCP with Playwright, then Playwright with scripts, and then Agent Browser kind of was just a little faster for us. I think it also telling is that Microsoft laid off a lot of the Playwright team. And so, whereas like Vercel is investing heavily in stuff like Agent Browser. So there was a little bit of a bet on like, oh, who's looking at the future? So there was kind of that transition. What else did I want to say on this? Oh, an interesting tidbit. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second because faces. I learned from someone at OpenAI that one of their strategies for testing, I think even Swift apps, but also web apps, was to just have an extremely robust accessibility tree. Which are you familiar with? Accessibility in the DOM and that web app type stuff.
Yeah, I mean with the DOM and how you would go around like manipulating and triggering.
Right. Okay. So accessibility in this case means like, how well have you crafted your app for people who have some sort of disability when it comes to interacting with a computer? So whether that's so whether that is like a mild visual impairment, like red-green color blindness, all the way to like very severe visual impairment, and unable to really see the screen in the same way that someone else would. And so especially older users of web pages like rely on voiceover, and that voiceover relies on being able to look at the document and say like, this is a clickable button that will submit a form. This is a form element that is an input. And it turns out all of the ways that you as a web developer or developer can just attach those hints, like that pays dividends for agents as well, because agents have vision. It's not super reliable or great, and they're much more comfortable ingesting something like the accessibility tree and being able to click things on the page like that. So it was a kind of a double whammy for OpenAI to be able to I think, yeah, because they have government contracts. My understanding is that like you have to have for the Americans with Disability Act, you have to have a certain level of accessibility requirements met, and at the end of the day, that's really good for their harness engineering, which is they have easily scannable, clickable, understandable DOM, and their agents can verify their work through the accessibility tree. So that was a very long explanation, but
it makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So what the agent sees in that case is like something with a role of button versus like a class name of .btn __ 3 -- purple. So I thought that was a good trick, and it's also kind to your users, your human users who might have a problem seeing. Okay. So we're at 20 minutes. I think the last thing that I wanted to talk about was a little bit of an epiphany I had regarding how we set up QA for our agents to be able to verify their work, and a tool that we released called Drift. And I wanted to demo something, but I don't know. Nella, any thoughts?
Well, now that's a cliffhanger. You wanted to demo something, and I'm like, yeah, where's the demo? So bring on the demo.
Yeah, I've not, again, I gotta prepare demos better, but you know, a lot of stuff going on.
It's a live demo. It's supposed to be chaotic. I mean, at least you wanted to show, I guess, Drift in a QA scenario. That was your idea.
Okay, so I guess when I say QA scenario, what do you imagine in your head for like an agent?
Like quality assurance, like that you test the app in some certain ways, so that you run certain tests on it. Maybe even a user test. Like, I mean, I think it's pretty much like, if I would see it, it's like the step that comes after review, like after something is already there, like proven, then I would do the quality assurance.
Yeah.
So I would assume it uses similar things like the review.
Indeed. I think, this is where the line's a little blurry. So we talked about Ultra Review, the kind of experimental feature from Anthropic. That to me is a very static review. It's like agents looking at code. Mm-hmm. Then there's kind of a spectrum from, you have like statically looking at code, looking for bugs. Then you get to like linting, type checking, running tests. That's a bit more of a verification loop of like the agent can know that its work is correct, we hope. And then after that, there's can it start the dev server or look at logs? Does it know which log file to watch, so that it can see data coming in and analyze that to make sure that things function the way it expects. And then there's like the agent pretending to be a user of the thing and interacting with it. And that was something I was very interested in. So the way that I stumbled into this is that I was building the first prototype of our sync engine, and I found myself manually like executing a sync command, like synchronize these issues from one directory, and then I'd go into another directory and I would pull them down, or I would try to edit the same issue and sync it and then see what happened. And I was like, this is not worth my time.
This should be like automated.
And I was like, and then I was like, oh man, but end-to-end, like these are these things I had to unlearn. I was like, end-to-end tests are just such a pain to write. They're flaky, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, or do you know who's very good at using CLIs? It's Claude. And do you know who can spawn multiple agents to test things concurrently, like possibly making concurrent edits and then seeing what happens? I was like, it's Claude.
It's Claude, yeah.
And so at first it was just prompts. And then I realized that like every time I was making changes and wanted to test something, I was like, oh, okay, I should save these somewhere. So I saved them in a folder called QA. And they were just markdown files that described, what behavior I wanted to test out. And then there's just like every feature I built after that, I would kind of keep these markdown files. And sometimes they would require it's like, oh, okay, you're going to build the CLI. And so you need to use that locally built binary, but you also need this other configuration so that it doesn't mess up my local machine and that you can keep it just in a tempter. And so all of this started like snowballing into like, there are some like helper scripts, but they're not really scripts. They're just like markdown documents. And then there's like the actual scenarios, what Claude should expect when it runs those scenarios, etc. So I scooped some of that up and I put it into a demo repo that looks a little bit like our code, and I will try to pull it up.
We make you pull up the demo.
I know. I'm just like talking to avoid having to do my demo. Okay, so this is what I have. A mono repo and something called bubs. What it is doesn't matter. It is a CLI. Command line interface, and the first scenario here is just to like kind of make sure that the CLI builds and the certain commands are as expected. This is a little bit of a trivial example, but we'll roll with it. In this case, you can see there's some front matter at the top. It's like, this is the name, and there's this requires, and that requires goes to, oopsies, helpers build CLI. And then these are instructions to the agent on like, how do you build a CLI? A lot of this looks like skills. And the reason I didn't really make it a skill is I feel like the skill part of this is like, how do you interact with these QA documents, not necessarily QA documents themselves. So there's some instructions of like, okay, if you see this QA scenario and it has requires, then look up these additional things in the helper directory. And that'll let you know, how do I build the CLI? How do I set up a test directory environment? So again, this was a little bit like our production app. When Claude or Codex goes to test the CLI, it'll first make a clean directory for running those tests. There's not much cross chatter between different tests, and it does that in temp. So I ran before this. Just to give an idea.
Go through all the scenarios automatically?
If you tell it. So I mean, like, so the big boss, the final step of all of this is that I have an OpenClaw instance that is with a specific Telegram channel just for running nightly QA jobs, where it goes through our repo and it executes as many, basically all the scenarios we have, and there's like 47. It takes quite a bit of time, but honestly, like, I'm not using all my tokens anyways, so I was happy to let it do that. And at the end, it saves the result. It sends me a message about the result in Telegram. It posts a message to our Slack as well in a channel with the result. And that's a way for us to proactively be like, oh, we had a regression. And it's actually quite helpful. It's a little wonky, needs some tuning, especially the Slack message is kind of noisy, but it has got bugs. So yeah, I usually do like to have it run all of the scenarios. But if you're just working on a feature, that's when you can just set up like a document, describes how to test it, and have it run that to verify its results. In this case, I told Codex here, maybe I can bump this up a little, run CLI basic test. Mm-hmm. And that was what we just looked at. So it's actually kind of fun. I just cloned this repo from remote, so it ran into some issues building. It realized it needed to download or install dependencies, so it ran bun install. Then it retried the scenario, and voila, it came back with this kind of result. Oh, what's that?
It says I recorded the run here. Oh yeah, that's
yes.
The same, right? That's the same file. Yeah. Okay.
That's in the skill territory. So I also instruct, basically anytime there should be an artifact of a QA run, and that's usually another markdown document, but those are get ignored. I don't like to check those in. If I open it up here, you can just see it date stamps it, says, oh, this is a pass. We were on this commit on main, and it tells you like what it did, what the output looked like, and why it was a pass. And this is very helpful to, like, if you're doing long running work and you come back to it. So meaning like you let Claude or Codex loose for a couple of hours and it's building something substantial. It's nice for you and for the agent to have some artifact that says like, this work is functional because I did X, Y, and Z, not because I finished what you told me to finish. Does that make sense?
Would you then? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But you said like you let Claude or whatever agent go wild for like a few hours. Would each task that the agent has be attached to a Q&A, or would you do the Q&A afterwards, like as a big sort of thing?
That depends. So funny enough, the thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the stream where it skipped all of the QA, that was when so typically I like to do a QA pass at the very, very end. So like everything is tasked out and there is review for each of those tasks. And then at the end, there's like a kind of a QA round that's like, does it all work together? And
for each epic, I guess, right? So if we think of epics, kind of like you would have the small ones with a review and the big ones that's like the parent issue has a QA.
Yeah. So actually, we might have a good example here. So this was, well, we might try executing this task in a second. Let me find a, yeah, okay. So this repo is also set up in a very particular way that I haven't ported into how we work as a team yet. But there are FP extensions with our task manager FP, so that anytime Claude files like a parent issue with multiple children, it gets a reminder to also file a QA ticket, essentially. In this case, this must have been before. I added another extension that's like never have a blank description, but I think this is before that because I don't like that. Oh yeah, this is very early because this is while I was creating the extension. So this is when I added some custom properties. And so when there's this custom property of category feature, the Claude is instructed to always, yeah, let me see if I can find.
So it's kind of the last sub issue is do the Q&A.
Yeah.
Whatever like scenarios you want to include or make sense for that specific parent issue.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like me building in, like making sure that when we do task decomposition, there is always a task dedicated to verifying the results. And verifying the results in the most realistic way possible that Claude can.
I have to say, like QA also means if you consider our Electron app, could also mean like spin up the Electron app and test it with your with the browser agent, basically.
Yes, which I pretty much always do. And this harkens back to Boris's tweet, which I think is quite common experience. Like, if you're trusting this thing to work for a super long amount of time, there's nothing more frustrating than coming back and it just like doesn't work. And it just feels like that's when you feel like a punch card operator, where it's just like your job then becomes being like, hey, it doesn't work. and realistically, this is something you can catch beforehand if you give the proper like tools for verifying and instructions for verifying to Claude.
And also, do I understand you a little bit correct here to say if you have a really good flow setup with review of each step plus a QA after each parent, if we want to phrase it like this, the ultra review, you kind of, I don't want to say you don't need the ultra review, but maybe you already have a review flow that you don't depend on the ultra review that Claude Code has released.
Yeah, ultra review seems like it's extremely expensive.
Yeah, you mentioned that. That's you. I didn't want to say that. I just wanted to say, like, if you have 3 ultra reviews in your plan, maybe set up something on your own to make sure that you don't need it. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's more of like a once in a while kind of thing, and a different beast, because like I think ultra review is also what it caught for me when I tested it out was like a bit more scenarios I had not really considered, or like potential for silent errors, potential for edge cases, and it's hard to capture all of those in a, like, you should try, but it's hard to capture all those in a QA scenario.
So would you say that, yeah, would you say it has captured the less important stuff for you?
Yes and no. I think I need to reread it. There was a bigger thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been talking so much. I will try to wrap this up. What I wanted to show, so a problem. Okay, so this it's like your solution always begets new problems. So I set up these QA things, and then recently I found that I keep repeating the work of after the fact going back and being like, hey, I think our scenarios are out of date. I need to, so I set up, like, I do a big swarm on all of our scenarios. And I'm like, all right, go through the scenarios and try to like reference, make sure that they make sense in light of recent code changes. That's a big one for me. And usually there's some crufty stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And I found, or rather I realized last week or 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh, we have a tool that solves this problem of like markdown documents going out of date with reality. And that tool is called Drift.
Yes.
And I'm actually very happy. This is the first time, so I'm going to do this in our own repo. Actually, no, I did 2 days ago. I started using Drift.
Interesting. I have a question now, because you have scenarios in Markdown, right? Just plain Markdown. And I thought that Drift was meant to be on code snippets, but you could also...
Drift. So what Drift does, Drift is meant for Markdown files, but it ties them to
code snippets, right? Yeah.
Yes. And so...
So you would go to your scenario and would tie it to code snippets in our code base. So whenever the code snippet changes, you can update your Markdown tests. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, that's exactly it. And because part of the problem was it either come up during QA or something like, oh, this doesn't really make sense anymore, or you removed that command. We don't need to test it anymore. And ideally, like, you should tackle that when you're working on the feature, not when you're 2 days later running a QA. And I don't know whether QA is, I call it QA, you can call it end-to-end, you can call it whatever you want. I think of it, I've worked with a brilliant QA named Deepak at my last job. And it feels a little bit, I was going to call this whole setup Deepak at some point as an homage to him.
Like a homage.
So I just, in a separate session, I added Drift to some of the QA scenarios, specifically the one about init, or rather the one that we looked at earlier for building and making sure that the basic commands work. I have Codex working. Actually, let me make it low so it'll go faster. And my hope, I know it's not super fun to watch Codex work on my window. I apologize for that. My hope is that as it claims this ticket, so what this ticket does is it renames init to start. Again, kind of trivial, but like the CLI had an init command that was in that document we looked at earlier. And now I'm going to rename it to start.
And so now we hope that Drift catches this and is updating this scenario, right?
Yes. However,
I see Drift, like the QA scenario is Drift bounded. I see that already.
What? Whoa! Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So immediately, right, because it's looking for files, and it must have hit the drift lock while I was doing that. Okay. I did not keep a compatibility alias because our ticket asked me for the command to be changed. That's good. And the drift, okay, and then here immediately you see the drift anchor refused the index relink until the scenario was reviewed. That's perfect. So this is something we built into Drift in the last week as well. So let's see here. Let's see if I can find it. Oh my gosh, it's a little chaotic. Yeah. Okay. So there's this flag with drift now called --doc is still accurate. This was after some discussion between Lau and myself. So we used to have, it used to be like --force. And what that does is so like when you relink a markdown file to a chunk of code, you want to make sure that the agent has actually like read both of them and made sure like that it's not just blindly relinking without analyzing, hey, did something material change and should I update the documentation that depends on this? And I kind of I got the sense from something you said in your blog post. By the way, Nella wrote a very good blog post.
Well, I mean, I guess we all were, like, I mean, it's the Fiberplane.
Don't,
right?
no, you wrote it. It says by Fiberplane team.
Yes.
Nella wrote it. Of course, we're a team. We all work together. But
I mean, it's like, I mean, I could not have written it without the team building with Cloud Code like this, because, you know, it feels more like this is a team blog post.
That said, well, okay, yeah, that aside.
I put the words together. That's okay.
Nella wordsmithed it. So the funny thing was, like, you have this section on, like, we enforce patterns with AST grep. And it was all about how, like, kind of this idea of programmatically finding issues and enforcing behavior. But then when we got to drift, there was a section on, like, I don't know if I'll find it immediately. Like,
yeah, I remember you had a comment there in the Google Docs, and it was like, what? Wait a moment, like, we do it differently for AskGrep. Why do we do it for Drift this way?
Yeah, it was basically just like the whole idea that we kind of relied on an instruction to the agent. Okay, yeah, I remember it now. So it's like in AST, the whole premise of AST grep was like, yes, you can give instructions on which patterns are good and which patterns are bad, but the more that the context window fills up, the more likely those are to be forgotten. And with Drift, I saw us, like, using basically that same idea of, like, oh, you have to, you instruct it to use or to reread the file, but we didn't have much just-in-time reminder to reread the file. And there was still a tendency or a possibility for an agent to just be like, oh, Drift is failing, I'll just relink it. Oh, the relinking worked, I'll just use the force flag. And so I was like, what if we made the force flag like a prompt injection? And my first proposal was something like Drift link, I am not lying that I reread this document. And Lau didn't like that as much as I did. I just thought it was fun. So after some back and forth, Lau changed it to Drift link, like doc is still accurate, something like that. And that's why we see that with Codex. So anyways, this ended up being a long stream, but I was kind of excited about connecting these two worlds of Drift and then this verification loop, because I really liked the verification loop of these like markdown scenarios of how to test the app. But I didn't like that I was going back and manually updating them quite often when code changed. So that is end of demo. I hope it was.
It was good. It also helped me to land softly again in agent land. You know, I think I'm ready to take off again after not being there for a week. So now I don't want to say recover is the wrong word, but now I'm ready again for all the AI stuff ahead.
Let's go.
Next week. I think there will be a next week, and we will probably come up with some fun idea. If someone else has a fun idea for us, also feel free to ping us. We are open for topics, I would say, at this point. If not, you probably hear from us with something that's on our minds.
Yeah, I think. No spoilers. We won't. We have some ideas.
ideas.
All right.
Well, all right, I end the stream.